Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, August 25th, 2021. Time for another show. That's what we always say at the beginning of these things. How you doing, everybody? You okay? We're going to shorten the show today. And as a matter of fact, I ran out of time to try to fix this, but I did see that Justice told me that the morning diary on it didn't go up. I'm thinking I scheduled it maybe a little earlier than usual last night, so I may have accidentally hit the default setting for publishing the thing in the morning or in the evening instead. I'm going to go and check out the queue right now and just try and fix that. Oh, but it's not even there. I didn't even... Well, now I can't explain anything. So, okay, how about that for a explanation of what's going on here? I don't know. I wrote up a whole thing last night, and it's now gone, and I guess maybe I never saved it. So here's the news. It's my birthday. Hooray. Hooray for me, everybody. And that's not exactly why we're shortening the show. But while we're doing the birthday bonanza thing, and I had a whole thing about it. I don't know what happened to my diary about it, but it shouldn't matter. I don't know. You should probably find your way here. And if you're listening, then you've had no problem finding your way here. And if you're normally going to the front page, or rather to the these days to our Kagro in the Morning group page over at Daily Coast, to find your way here to the live feed, you'll find that the link is the same as it was in yesterday's. And if you accidentally mistake yesterday's morning post for today's, well then you'll be just fine, and you'll click on it and it'll bring you there. Look at that. I'm looking at yesterday's, it is here. That's interesting. I guess I published it I must have done that, instead of actually scheduling it for this morning's publication. Maybe I just sort of hit publish last night and it's up, and okay, you'll find your way there. It's just that it was published last evening at 11:30 instead of this morning at 8:45 like it's supposed to be. So that's the answer to that mystery. Okay. I knew it couldn't have just disappeared. But yes, it's a birthday bonanza. If I recall correctly from all the previous years in which I started out saying, hey, if I recall correctly, it is also Armando's birthday, which, I don't know whether that explains everything or nothing. And tomorrow is Scott's birthday. So they all come at once. And what we're doing with that, as I said, is we're only going to do 1 hour of the show today. It has nothing to do with the birthday situation, except for the fact that, well, it's coincidental. I explained it yesterday briefly. I gotta take one of the kids to the orthodontist at 10:10 today, and we're about 10 minutes away. So the options were pre-tape a show, which means Greg doesn't get to come on, and it's a big day. It's nice to be able to have Greg come around. So I figured we just have to do that. We'll have Greg come around. We'll share the news. We'll wrap things up. And then at the top of the hour, instead of that 1 minute break, it's going to be a 23-hour break. Think of it that way. And we'll just play if we can get things right, the goodbye music, the outro music, and we'll take off, and I'll take the kids to, one of them to the orthodontist. What a way to celebrate one's birthday, right? Sitting around in the orthodontist's office. I'm not even getting any work done. So I get that. Plus, to top it all off, a really fun meeting that I have to go to tonight. In fact, a meeting that I have to run tonight. So super fun and a great way to spend your birthday. I also have to prepare for school opening tomorrow. And they're going back in person and everything. And it's been like a year and a half. And I have to try and remember how to get him to, to school. The pickup of the bus has changed, but I haven't packed a lunch and you might ask, why are you packing a lunch at all? Your youngest school child is now 16 years old. Can't he pack his own lunch? And the answer is, we could try that. But I don't know how well that would go. I'll say that. As it stands, most of the show prep in the morning these days is clearing away the detritus of what was left out in the kitchen last night. So I think preparing his own lunch would, it's a good thing, and we should prepare him for life, etc. But I also happen to know that makes the morning that much more complicated for me as it stands. I'd rather just make the lunch myself. So we don't get anywhere with that. I just get the way I get things halfway the way I want. So anyway, just realizing that sending kids back to school is like, I used to know how to do this. What do I need to have on hand? What sorts of food? What do you eat for lunch anyway, kid? So trying to figure that out. And then clothing, another thing, which we just haven't paid attention to for the last year and a half, because schooling's been at home and hardly anybody sees what he's wearing, if anyone at all, because the rules is they're supposed to have their cameras on, so no one turns their cameras on. I think teachers are going to be glad to be done with that for the most part, although I think our school system gave kids the option, or parents the option, to opt out of in-person schooling. I don't know whether anybody did. I'm sure someone somewhere did. And I guess when they start quarantining kids, inevitably, we'll be back to online schooling pretty quickly. But in the meantime, I have to figure out how to prepare for all of this. And, of course, we're now in the age of no peanut butter allowed in the school. So, the old standby of peanut butter and jelly never works. And what's weird is that a lot of the kids, my kids, the peanut butter having been banned from every place they've ever gone to school, don't like peanut butter. I don't know if they would have if they had been able to have it regularly as younger kids, but they don't. So the peanut industry ought to be lobbying against this. Starting now. All right, well, Greg Dworkin is here. There's plenty to catch up on. Lots happened in Congress yesterday. Many people caught coronavirus yesterday, so lots to catch up on. Good morning, Greg. How you doing?
Good morning. So I came in late on that. You said
That's
something
okay.
about cameras. Are teachers using body cams these days?
No, but they're moving our kids back to in-person learning, but they had given us the option of keeping somebody, I guess, for if you have some particular interest in keeping your kids at home, you can still do the online learning. And during the entire period while they were online, they were supposed to be, learning on Zoom or whatever else. And the rule was, the teacher said, well, I need to be able to see you and see my students and see when you have questions.
Okay.
Turn on your cameras, which resulted in a year of them saying, please turn on your cameras. And kids aren't going to turn on their cameras if they don't have to. Adults aren't going to have to.
But, that's the child version of the adult. Please mute your mic.
Right, yeah. Or please put your pants on when you
Wait
come
your
to the
turn.
meeting, whatever
Only
it is.
turn it on when you have a question. Turn it off so everybody else can hear. Otherwise, a lot of crosstalk.
Yeah.
But, they're immunosuppressed kids, and they're not necessarily ready to go back to school.
Yeah. Some of them won't. And I'm glad that they have that still working in tandem with the in-person learning, because pretty soon they'll all be immune compromised and they'll all have to go and stay home or be quarantined because the kid next to them had to go home because he was sick. So
Right.
I imagine they'll move
we'll
back
try to
that
touch
soon
on the
enough.
pandemic, of course, but
All right.
there's a lot of other news, as you pointed out, and maybe even leading today will be the fact that the bird feeders are up.
Ah, yes, right. I heard that
In
was
Virginia
happening.
who first noticed it, they noticed that the number of calls to the bird rescue centers was dropping. And so they released bird feeders to go back up, and then Connecticut followed suit. We'll see what other states do. Check with your local Audubon Society or Department of Health or Environment or whatever it is in your state. In Connecticut, it's DEEP, Department of Environmental Protection. And the advice is, if you're going to put them up, clean feeders and bird baths with soap and water at least once a week, and then disinfect with a 10% bleach solution to prevent potential infectious disease spread between birds and other wildlife. After cleaning, rinse well with water, allow to air dry, and make sure you wash your hands after you fill the feeders. In fact, if you can, even wear disposable gloves. You don't need disposable gloves for like COVID, but if you stocked up on them, because you didn't know that, and people were telling you to wash your library books at the beginning of the pandemic, use those gloves for your feeders.
That's a good idea. Fill the gloves with seeds and poke a hole in the bottom and use them as a feeder.
Yeah, and
fingers, and
make
fingertips.
them sunflower seeds and hearts, and you'll attract cardinals and yellow finches. You know,
All right.
and that's
Can
really
I
what
just
it's about. So we
throw the
should
seed on the
mention
ground?
that. There's obviously a lot going on. In terms of the evacuation from Afghanistan, 19,000 people were evacuated in the last 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, people don't remember this, but the number of people that were evacuated from Saigon back in the day, in the Vietnam War era, was 7,000.
Yes. Well, smaller helicopters back then.
7,000 Afghans and Americans were evacuated from the country before this major evacuation happened, according to CNN statistics. 87,900 have been evacuated since July, 82,000 since August 14th.
Well, that's a lot.
So it is a lot. So, you know, the question I posed this morning is like, what's the number?
Oh,
Like if everybody's declaring
what do you
this is
mean?
the debacle and it's terrible and it's horrible and it's chaos, and
what's the
Mike
number to
Lukovich has this
undebacle it?
political cartoon. He's got Biden's Ark here with all the animals on it and a CNN reporter. And the CNN reporter is saying, complete debacle. The zebras are seasick.
Yeah, that's I mean, so your question is at what number do they say it's
So
an
what's the number
undebacle?
we're supposed to get? I mean, I saw estimates before this all
He's
started.
doing the wrong thing.
Is that we need to get 85,000 people out. And CNN said, that'll never happen.
Yeah, can't. It's impossible.
Can't happen. It's impossible. Was their exact words. And we've gotten 87,000 out. But that's not really the number, because there's more that want to get out, need to get out.
I don't know.
What's the definition of, like, what's our goal? What's our end point here? Need is something we decide. Want is something they decide. But probably, you know, a million want to get out. That's not the same thing as the U.S. determines that X number needs to get out.
Yeah.
What is the number that the airlift is planning for?
Oh.
And what's the end point? I mean, you know, you step back and you look and you
August
say, well,
31st.
Republicans are treating Afghanistan like they're the 51st state, like we're supposed to evacuate everybody.
Well,
Not to
all
my
of a sudden
state,
they
they
want
say,
them.
but, you know.
Oh, yeah, right.
Not
Wherever
to
you
my
want to
neighborhood.
put them, sure.
I don't want them on my block, but
That's true.
You know, you're supposed to get them out, because if you don't get them out, it's a failure.
Now we
What's
know
the number? What is the real number?
we should have opted for the easier option there, and and this is easier to pin down number-wise, throwing paper towels to them. That would have been a lot easier, like 4 or 5 rolls of paper towels, and you're good. They leave you alone.
Yeah, I suppose. Dave Ruffkoff has a very interesting tweet rant from a couple of days ago, which I think kind of summarizes a little bit what's going on here. And again, this is not meant to be Biden apologia, but you know, you have to put things in perspective, and there's just so little perspective going on with the media. I think Lukovich is right to highlight that, even though that's one extreme of looking at
I'll
it.
agree. Yes.
The people who are trying to get Afghans out who haven't been able to get out yet point out there's still a lot going on that's all screwed up, particularly at the State Department, where getting visas is almost impossible. But at the same time, the U.S. is in this political quandary where if somebody does come in, they're supposed to be vetted. How do you vet them? By cutting paperwork.
Yes, that's the opposite, typically.
Right. So how do you know they're not Taliban? Or how do you know they're not Al-Qaeda? That's why we went in there. Well, you have to vet them. But if you vet them, why is it taking so long? Because
it takes a while to vet people.
Hello. Because like you have to balance these things.
By the way, who's
so that's
to blame
not that's
if
not
if there's
again, that's not an excuse. But you know, that is what's going on, and so we'll have to see that play out. So Rothkopf writes, right now, the administration is conducting a massive operation in Kabul that has resulted in the evacuation when he wrote this was 50,000 people in 8 days. It's now 87,000. It's also overseeing a life and death battle against COVID that's already resulted in over 200 million Americans receiving the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
It's also in the midst of negotiations in support of the passage of a vitally needed $1 trillion infrastructure bill, the biggest the U.S. has passed in decades. It's also at the same time on Capitol Hill involved in negotiations to pass a $3.5 trillion budget package. And taken together, these two congressional initiatives would lead to the biggest investment America's made in itself and in projects vital to our national security and well-being in more than half a century. Mm-hmm. Last night, the vice president of the U.S. gave a stirring and effective speech in Asia, underscoring America's resolve to stand up to Chinese abuses. Hours before the president made an address announcing the approval by the FDA of the Pfizer vaccine, and urging people to receive that vaccine, despite an organized disinformation campaign from the GOP that's leading to widespread death and suffering. Hello, Florida. Where does Ron DeSantis go to get his apology? The Department of Justice is working on hundreds of cases related to the attempted coup against the U.S. in January 6th, while actively conducting programs to reduce the future risk of domestic violent extremism. And he goes on for another 7 or 8 tweets here. So the Biden administration has a lot on its plate, but it's also handling a lot.
Yes, and handling it, certainly relatively well, right?
I mean, problems
compared
with each
to
and
the guy
every
who
one
went
of those
golfing.
you can find fault and take umbrage if you want.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on.
And a lot of them
it's, again, not an excuse. This is the reality of what's going on here. If you're president, you have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time and also do 9 other things.
Yes, and we learned what happens when you can't. You get the Trump administration. There's not a single thing on that list that the Trump administration could have confidently executed. And I can't even imagine how the evacuation would have gone. It wouldn't have gone. They just wouldn't have evacuated anybody.
Well, again, it's a reminder that Trump not only signed the agreement with the Taliban to get out by May 1st.
Yes.
But Stephen Miller
Right.
was instrumental in making sure that the visa program was absolutely sidelined and couldn't
no one
be done.
could get out. Right. So they were going to leave earlier and take no one. But somehow people, I guess, convinced themselves, Trump supporters, that the guy who went and tossed paper towels at the hurricane victims would have been that much more compassionate, would have handled everything. And I'm sure he would have talked all the private airlines into flying to Kabul and just picking people up and flying them to destinations unknown, which is what's gone on here, by the way. I mean, not only is the military evacuating people, but civilian aircraft are, sending valuable empty aircraft from the United States over to Kabul. I mean, imagine getting that assignment, too. Here you go, pilot. Here's your new... We're not going to Denver. You're going to Kabul. And, it might get in, might get
again,
out.
a lot of the civilian stuff is for outside of Afghanistan, because once you fly them to a place, whether it's
Yes.
Qatar or somewhere else,
Even
then
so,
you have
yeah.
to go from there to yet another different place, and that's
Right.
where the civilian airlines come in.
Okay, so they're not flying to Kabul. Okay,
Not necessarily.
That would be a better
Unless
assignment,
you're
certainly. But even so,
unless you're self-molten and you're trying to catch a flight to Afghanistan so that
yes.
you can grandstand.
I need to see this for myself. I understand that a little bit. At least they were, in support of the mission, as opposed to going and saying the whole thing sucks, like Kevin McCarthy. He didn't go, but just taking to the floor yesterday to declare a debacle. And,
Every congressman that goes
Biden
now
has
is
blood
taking
on
the
his
seat away
hands.
from somebody trying to get out.
That's true, unless we leave him there. We haven't
Oh,
thought about
I
that
didn't
option.
think of that option, but in the case of Seth Moulton, that's not really a bad
Came
idea.
back because we could say, you can vote and everything like remotely. Just bring Skype with you, and I have to put an Afghan person on your seat for the moment. You'll be fine. We'll come back for you. Plenty of airlines will come in and pick you up. Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand this approach that they've taken, and Republicans dedicating themselves to declaring it a bloodbath in which
Peter
no one
Mayer
died.
and Seth Moulton, and as Dave Darmerfeld, political scientist, note, as just one among many possible bad outcomes. They could have been taken hostage.
That's an outcome, sure.
I mean, it is a evolving situation.
Yes, that's definitely true. And look, I can't. I don't know. It's an outcome. Probably bad. Probably bad. You're right.
I don't
think
understand
I'll
how
give
you
you that.
justify going now. It's not that you can't go, but why are you going now?
That's
What do you hope to
true.
accomplish?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I
It's
can
not
appreciate the
sanctioned by
need for
leadership.
oversight.
It's
and
not approved of by the Biden administration. They don't want
No.
you there. What are you supposed to accomplish?
I don't know. How'd they get it done? Maybe we should talk to them. Like, maybe you guys are great at logistics. You're in the wrong job.
Yeah, you be in charge.
I don't know. I mean, I guess so. They managed to get. Imagine getting a seat for yourself on a plane like that without the approval of the administration at this point. I'd like to know how they did it.
Right?
We'll focus
Diplomacy
on
and
that.
National Security reporter John Hudson for the Washington Post says it cannot be overstated how angry Pentagon and State
wait a
Department
minute. I'll
officials
do it.
are at Moulton and Mayer for flying to Afghanistan in the middle of an evacuation. It's as moronic as it is selfish. They're taking seats away from Americans.
I guess. I mean, on the way out, anyway. I'd love to know how they managed it. Well, I'll say that. And they had good things to say about what was going on. At least there's that. I'm glad they didn't go there and criticize it.
Again, what are they doing?
I really don't know. Isn't there enough television footage for you to watch? Chaos, look.
Yeah, especially on day one, even though things are going a little bit differently now.
Yeah.
So,
right.
as Jim Bartow points out on Twitter, the reporting on Afghanistan, like most news, isn't about facts, it's about story. And so they've decided their story. And the story is CNN on Biden's art.
Yeah. Basically it. They made it, though. He did put them on.
They did. So, it's easy to be ranty about it. But
okay.
Seth Masket has a very interesting piece in Mischiefs of Faction, which is a political science blog. And he, of course, is a political scientist. This is leading off the Pundit Roundup. What future presidents are learning from Afghanistan? Media coverage of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan and the rapid Taliban takeover there have been profoundly negative, portraying Biden's action as a series of blunders that undermined his claims to having an administration built on competence. Observing these events a bit more quietly have been people like Kamala Harris, Ron DeSantis, and others who hope to be the next president. They're taking notes on how Biden has handled these events. What lessons are they learning? Likely few of them see this as an issue that'll drive Biden from office. Afghanistan isn't going to generate presidential removal. And the bloody foreign engagement overseen in Korea and Vietnam by Truman and Johnson likely ended their careers, and the death toll in Iraq undoubtedly hurt W. But outside of those unusually costly spectacles, foreign policy is rarely central to presidential campaigns. So, for the sake of argument, let's just posit that Biden did as good a job as could have been done in this situation. That is, let's assume the U.S. military mission there had been lost years ago, that a democratically elected Afghan government was never going to survive without being propped up by thousands of American soldiers, and that unless the U.S. was willing to commit to an indefinite military occupation, it was always going to face a moment like this once it withdrew. Yeah. And that might even be right. Would the media tone have been any less negative? So media bias is often widely misunderstood. Mainstream news reporters may indeed lean somewhat left on a personal level, but that's not typically how they cover the news. Rather, they focus on blood and scandal. Nuance is in short supply, particularly in dramatic moments where reporters' access is substantially limited. Like the CNN reporter said, how can we possibly get that many people out? Except we got more than that out. As Jonathan Bernstein noticed, there's an understandable bias from publications that need to sell copy and attract readers and viewers, but it's still biased. And even with this bias, we could view such coverage as in some respects a good thing. Avoiding that sort of coverage is the incentive presidents have to get it right. And even if they're not going to be punished in the next election, politicians don't like to look foolish and incompetent. On the other hand, we could see this as a reason neither Bush, Obama, nor Trump wanted to rip off the bandage and get out.
Yes.
Avoiding this coverage was the reason these presidents decided to give the occupation one more year, 19 times, 28 freedmen units.
Yes, I imagine that's it.
The dozens of presidential hopefuls and hundreds of thousands of their potential staffers are watching these events. They would not be crazy to conclude that indefinite occupation is preferable to withdrawal, even from an unpopular war that's 2 decades old. Now, a month from now, it's probably not really relevant, right? The day after the day after the day after that, by Tom Friedman is much better than his Friedman unit. We'll just have to wait 6 months and see. So everybody's noting this. And, part of the problem with media being semi-hysterical in order to get clicks and, sell advertising is that it completely distorts American foreign policy if you let it. And people running for president are more than happy to let it because they need that press in order for themselves to run.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if all of that is true, DeSantis has taken a huge hit. Here's a piece from Greg Sargent. Ron DeSantis' anti-mask mania is deeply unpopular, and Democrats need to jump on it.
All right.
A new Q poll out of Florida, he cites. Plurality of Florida residents believe DeSantis is hurting efforts to slow the spread of COVID. 46 to 41. 73% think the spread of COVID is a serious problem. 59% say out of control, and 61% preventable. 60% support requiring students, teachers, and staff to wear masks in schools. Yes. So even in Florida, they want masks.
That's right.
59% support requiring mask wearing in indoor spaces. And 63% say the issue of wearing masks is public health, not freedom.
Yes.
68% say local officials should generally be able to require masks in indoor public spaces. DeSantis's antics about, suing those who don't or cutting off their money, very unpopular. And as Greg Sargent says, large majorities reject just about every aspect of DeSantis's framing of this public debate. Majorities do not only support mask mandates, they see them as public health, legitimate tool for local officials. They don't see them as infringement on freedom and see them as effective against COVID spread, which they view as a problem that's both preventable and DeSantis has personally made worse.
Oh, well,
so that's where he is. So, Floridians aren't stupid. And that's part of the reason why states do what they do. It isn't just the governors. The governors can say whatever they want. Kristi Noem or Ron DeSantis or Greg Abbott can say or do whatever they want. If the public rejects what they're saying and acts responsibly anyway, then gubernatorial malfeasance is actually going to be mitigated.
Yes.
Because if people wear masks, even though the governor said you don't have to, you're better off. If people get vaccinated, even though the governor's not making a big deal out of it in your particular state,
right?
Because we see it as personal freedom, not public health, but people get vaccinated anyway, then the governor's idiocy gets mitigated. And so, to a certain extent, that's why it's so hard to track. Well, in this particular state, you did well, but in that particular state, plus they had travel.
Oh, yes.
And so it's even at a hyper local level. My town, Newtown, has the one of the higher COVID rates surrounding the city of Danbury.
Are they not listening?
And we don't have an indoor mask mandate. And our first selectman, the equivalent of the mayor, says, the problem is travel. Everybody travels to New York, and, there's only so much you can do locally if you're going to go out and bring the virus back to us.
Yeah.
So just get yourself vaccinated and do your mask thing as you see fit.
I guess so. I used to think there was nothing Tannerite couldn't solve, but I guess that's not the case.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Hi everyone, it's me, Gil. Minimal contributor to content, but regular contributor to funding for Kagro in the morning. Let's change things up from David's so very tired plea for your contributions with a plea of my own. If you want to add your voice to the show, do it. Record your own segment using your favorite recording device and send it to David. Read an article and give your opinion. Write your own essay and read that. The sky's the limit. Well, not really. Try to keep it relatively short so David doesn't have to stress about cutting it and hurting your feelings. Join the hallowed ranks of Greg Dworkin and Joan McCarter and be part of this somewhat witty deep dive into political topics with unnecessary censoring. Lend your voice to the show by sending it to kagrox@gmail.com. KAGROX@gmail.com.
Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue on with Greg Dworkin. We've only got half an hour left. What are we going to do? We got to cover the rest of the world.
Well, you could cover what happened in the House yesterday.
Yes.
As it turns out, there was this rule and a vote on a $3.5 trillion budget plan on agreeing to the resolution. 220 Democrats voted yay.
Yay.
And 212 Republicans voted nay.
Yay.
And so strictly across party lines with no defections whatsoever, including from the moderate 9+1.
Right.
The the rule passed. It's a resolution.
Yes.
And so what does it mean, and how did Pelosi get those moderates to agree to stop being a pain in the butt? And the answer is she promised them that there would be a vote.
Right.
By a date certain, September 27th, I think.
Yes, I think so.
Part of the deal there that's just so interesting is that speakers just have so many tools to work with.
Right, and so many tools that they have to work around as well.
With so many tools they have to work with, but also tools they have to work with.
Yes, right.
So accent has to be on the right syllable there to understand what I'm saying here. Mm-hmm. But the point is that one of the many, many tools that Pelosi has is that as Speaker, let's say there is a vote.
Yes.
Let's say there's two.
I will say,
right? Yeah. One on the bipartisan bill, BIB, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, the BFD, and then a separate vote on the reconciliation.
Let's say
there is, and let's say the Speaker gets to pick which order they're done in.
Yeah, all right, okay.
All right, and let's say, for the sake of argument, that the progressives say we have to do them together, and that means that either they're at the same moment or infrastructure somehow or other has to be not done until reconciliation is done. Mm-hmm. And the moderates say, no, we have agreed with the Speaker, who's agreed with us, and her word is her bond, that infrastructure will come first, even if it's by 35 seconds.
Okay.
And let's say Pelosi wants to satisfy everybody.
Not sure.
One tool she has, as I understand it, you're the expert, I'm the amateur, is that once you vote on it, and it becomes passed, it's up to her when she sends it.
That's
she
true.
could still
she
hold it.
Right.
Like if Bill 1 is promised to pass first and Bill 2 has to be passed before Bill 1, but Bill 1 is promised first, you could pass Bill 1 and then tell the Bill 2 people, okay, it's passed, but I'm not sending it until Bill 2 is also passed.
Right.
And then there's no argument about Bill 1 because it's already passed. Where's your leverage?
Yes, that can be done, and it was.
Right. Am I understanding that?
Yes, I think so. I mean,
so Pelosi can basically manage this. Like she's got some experience here.
Yes.
And she's also got experience, with healthcare when that was done.
True, also, right?
And I just don't see where anybody. Every vote is important, right? When you have a tiny majority, 220 to 212, every vote matters. Mm-hmm. But she's got a lot of tools to manage this, and she could afford to lose to Seth Moulton and Peter Mayer because they were held hostage in Afghanistan while all of this was going on. Yeah. I mean, she could afford to lose a couple of votes.
Well, they offset.
But the fact is, when you come down to it, which Democrat is going to tank Joe Biden's agenda, and how is that going to help their own reelection? Which really you should ask the other way around. How is it going to help their reelection if Joe Biden's agenda is tanked, and are you going to be the one to do it? And the answer is no.
Right.
It's not going to help, and no, you're not going to do it. And so Pelosi knows this, and so this is like a BFD that this passed yesterday.
Yes, it is, and again, it's another example of the media kind of insist on having their narrative, and lost in all of it was that at bottom, both sides in the moderate versus the rest of the, not even moderate really, but the 9 versus the rest of the Democrats' storyline was even the 9 say they want both of those bills to pass. They just want them in a different order, and I don't really know what convinced them that it was a great idea to have a fight over the order, but they did. And then when they were assured, you'll get it pretty much the way you want it, but nobody gets everything they want, but you can have most of it, the 9 said, okay, the unbreakable 9, as Joan reminded us they were being advertised as by No Labels, who I understand had a big press conference planned for yesterday afternoon and then just called it off for no apparent reason.
So, as I understand it, No Labels is run by a woman who's married to Mark Penn, and Mark Penn was the mentor for Seth Moulton, and so, like 6 degrees of separation, everybody knows everybody else in Washington, and the whole thing's a big mess?
Something like that. I think the name I saw, and it may be both of them for all I know, but I think I saw the mentorship was of Josh Gottheimer, which would explain.
Oh, that could be. Sorry, Josh Gottheimer.
Yeah. Yes. So I mean, it may also be Seth.
I got my what the hell are you doing? People mixed up there for a moment.
There are only a couple of them yesterday, so you can be forgiven. You're in the right ballpark. But yes, and I don't know. I don't know why No Labels is around. I don't understand it. But
and people
money,
pay them. But my point here is that it's not like Gottheimer and everybody else have a point, have a thing they want.
Oh, yes.
There's no policy that they are asking for.
Yes,
they don't have a negotiating position in that regard. Their one and only point is the same point that Republicans have, which is to own the libs.
Yeah, weirdly, yes.
Weirdly, I mean, in a different way. I mean, they'll work with him, they'll vote for him, they're family, but it's very important to them for whatever reason in their own head or as they think going back to their constituencies, they have to go back and say, the progressives didn't get everything they wanted thanks to me.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I don't know why, because progressives actually, it's not like everything progressives suggest are good, but they have concrete suggestions.
They do.
And, you know, it's like, okay, let's get together and propose this big infrastructure plan. Well, whatever it is too much.
Yeah.
We have to cut it back. Why? Because we do.
We don't like the number. Sometimes.
We don't like the number.
Yeah.
What number would you like? Well, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, we don't like it. You have to cut it down.
One of the smaller numbers. There are
we need a smaller number than that big number, and that's my position. And so it's very hard to negotiate on any given one thing because that's not what I'm saying.
Yes.
I'm saying it's got to be a smaller number. I don't care what's in it. That's detail. I don't do detail.
Right.
I do big picture. That's capital. Big picture.
Yeah, I guess
capital
so.
B, capital P. Mm-hmm. You know, and so Gottheimer and his buddies saw that happened in the Senate and said, well, why can't we do that in the House? And there's a lot of different reasons. One of them is that the House doesn't work the same way as the Senate. Another is Pelosi.
Right.
And a third one is that you're not negotiating with Republicans here.
Right.
It's just a completely different animal. And so, you know, forgive me, I did not spend every moment reading Politico and Axios and Punchbowl trying to figure out exactly where they were this minute compared to an hour ago, because I didn't really think it would matter. The damn thing's going to pass. Let's move on and look at the next thing. And that's what happened. So I missed a lot of the, oh, well, they're in trouble. Oh, they're not in trouble. Dems in disarray. Oh, well, Pelosi's doing a power move. Oh, this. Oh, that. Oh, well, you know, 220, 212. That's what I saw.
Yeah. Well, that's all there really is to see was the end point. I did see a thread yesterday from Paul Waldman, no relation, and no birthday today, as far as I know, saying largely the same thing, and saying, really laying it at, it seems like because they had no policy demand, it seems like they were just in it for the attention, that they did what they did because they wanted to be at the center of the news, and they were tired of AOC getting all the attention, so they were going to throw a tantrum and get attention for themselves. And that seems like a dumb thing. But, you know.
Well, you know, it's a political skill.
Yeah.
When used properly.
Right. There you go. And otherwise it's just,
otherwise it's just a tantrum.
Yeah. That guy's a jerk, and I say so politically.
Well, you know, again, you have to ask the question, what are you asking for and where's your leverage? And in the end, what are you going to do?
Yes, right.
You know, and the answer in this particular case is we're not very good at it. We don't know.
Yeah. Actually, I recall that there was a time when the people who might have the proclivity to join something like this not group of 9 holdouts used to their core criticism of at the time of the Occupy Wall Street people, right? Well, what do they want? What's their ask? What are their demands? They can't be political actors, period, unless they have specific demands. And then they either learned the lesson, no, that's not true, or they were being hypocrites at the time, or some bit of both. And I imagine, like most things, it's a mix of both. But how come we weren't pulling that meme out? That they're obviously political neophytes. They have no idea what they're asking for.
Right. And again, this is a comment on the coverage. It's not like Pelosi does everything correctly. There's a lot of things that she does wrong, and probably the biggest thing she does wrong, in my point of view, is that she doesn't have enough younger people there being groomed for leadership after she goes, and she will be going relatively soon. And if you're cut out of leadership and don't see a path upward, you tend to leave because, like, what's the point?
Right. True.
So that's my biggest criticism of her. But she knows what she's doing. She's got some experience.
Right.
And the weirdest thing is that this is a dynamic situation that you have to manage, and you have to be, just like Afghanistan, you got to be used to a little bit of chaos in order to get what you need done, because it's never going to go as smoothly as it looks on paper. It just doesn't work that way.
Yes.
And so what I see in the coverage is acknowledgement that Pelosi has a lot of tools that she can use to get what she wants, including backing from the White House, timing of bills, withholding, sending it to the White House for signature, all these other things that she could do, as well as threaten, people about their districts with redistricting coming up, as well as, withholding money and campaign funds. A lot of things that she could do to manage this. And it's going to be chaotic if and when that happens. And I see some of the media coverage being, well, all right, so Pelosi got the vote she wanted, 220, 212. But why didn't she nail this down a week ago? Mm-hmm. Why is she so late for this? How did she let this get away from, really? It's the same sort of coverage you get from the Afghanistan withdrawal.
Yes, I was wondering why she didn't evacuate all those votes.
Last week or last month when she could,
Right.
Because when you're in a dynamic situation, it takes time for some of the stuff to come together, and sometimes you don't feel the pressure until the end. And a good speaker will use that pressure to her advantage to make sure that people, line up the way she wants. She's good at this. Yeah. Not everybody is. And remember, Seth Moulton, the other "what are you doing" guy, wanted her job.
Yes, and then he went to Afghanistan. So,
well, that's his example of his judgment. I'm thinking maybe the Democrats are better off with Pelosi, with all her flaws.
Yes, right. Well, I think so. But is he back now? I assume so. Did he come back and vote? What happened? Did he cast his vote remotely? It's a long way to get there and back. Yeah. All right. Well,
anyway, but it's the dynamics at the House are just weird. You've been there, you know that. But as an outsider looking at this, you sometimes scratch your head and say, I don't really understand a lot of what's going on. And even when I read everything, I still don't understand a lot of what's going on. And it's not that Pelosi had this totally under control from the beginning. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done, but it's dynamic, and you shift and you make adjustments as you go along. That's part of the deal.
Yes.
If you're watching football, why didn't they win in the first quarter? Well, they made adjustments throughout the game. It was a close game, and then they did some things at the end that were really important, and so they won. Yeah, well, why didn't they do that in the first quarter? That's not how the game works.
I guess not. Or did you find out that you needed to do that? Well, that's what the first quarter is for.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So, I had my plan, but I didn't realize they had their plan too, and so I really needed to see it before I could adjust to it.
Yeah. Well, not all leaders have
why don't you cover
plans.
it that way?
Oh. Too many words. Took longer.
Too many words.
Yeah, or the other one was already written, or that's not the footage I had.
Right. So, this, I often, and have for years, like going back to 2003 maybe 2000, had some, criticism of how media covers things. Sure. And I note to myself, some of it has gotten better, but a lot of it really hasn't.
Yeah, that's true. Some good, some bad. And, of course, there's always somebody somewhere in the media doing a good job. So you really need to cling to that thin reed. Usually you don't know what you're missing until somebody does a good job, and then you say, aha!
Find out who's doing the good job and then follow them, and that's the best way that you can really figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
But, different reporters have assigned to themselves different tasks. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's the congressional reporters who do this on a day in, day out, moment to moment basis. And they're basically telling you, this is what happened. This is what happened. This is what happened. This is what happened. Then there are the analysts. They're the ones that I really take exception to, not so much the, beat reporters who are explaining what's going on, who are staying up to 2 a.m. so that you can read what happened because you didn't stay up to 2 a.m. Those guys are great.
Yes.
But it's this is what it means, and this is what it means in the next hour, and what I wrote in the last hour isn't true. And word has it that this is what it means, and then this is what it means. And a lot of that turns out to be useful, and a lot of it turns out to be untrue, and a lot of it is speculation because you're laying off the facts and you're trying to tell your story. And if your story is Dems in disarray, then you're going to cover it very differently than if your story is things are always messy in Congress. And now that you have an issue that you care about and you're paying attention, perhaps you now realize just how messy this always is.
Yeah, I don't know how much that sells. That's good reporting, though.
No, but it's better reporting when you do it that way. That's what we try to do.
Right.
And that's why we try to bring some perspective about what's going on here. And sometimes not knowing all the players personally is, you don't get the scoops, but you have a better perspective on like what the end game is here.
Yeah. You feel more comfortable laying it out.
I don't really care how Gottheimer feels about this.
Ah. Well, it might make an interesting story, just not for...
Yeah, later.
Else. Okay. I guess that's true. All right. Well, it's a weird world. The thing's passed, and now we work on executing the various elements of it, and one of them, of course...
Was there a
the voting
demon
rights.
pass as part of this?
Yeah, there were like two.
Like, so again, my civilian understanding, dilettante understanding of deem, D-E-E-M,
Yes.
and pass, the
Yes.
demon, D-E-M-O-N, pass
I don't
thing
even know
here,
why the and
is
pass
that if you
in
deem
there.
that it passed, then it passed, but then you don't have to take a vote, and so you can't use the vote against me when I run.
That's the usual application of it, and a lot of the coverage of this assumed that was the aim in using it this time. But I think the aim was just to do the ordering and to make sure that things happened fast enough so that they could get started on the reconciliation bill. I don't think anybody was looking to avoid a vote on the budget.
Well, it's one of the things you could have held up if you wanted to, if you were trying to make leverage and get people to do what you wanted to do.
Yeah. Right. If there are people who say, I support this budget, but I'm afraid to vote for it because of my district, you can satisfy them by deeming it passed in the rule, sort of. I don't know, but
that's different than I want to take it hostage.
Yeah,
because it's so important, and that's how I'm going to get my way. And you don't have that many votes, and you can't count on Republicans, so you have to do what I want.
Yeah, and different from this fight over. Well, we want to vote on the infrastructure bill first. Well, we want to vote on reconciliation first, or at least on the budget to get reconciliation started. Well, in this case, you say, how about if I engineer it so that there's one vote and it's a tie, and you don't get to go first and you don't get to go first, but we all go at the same time. Like I was saying yesterday, it's the playground solution to this. I want to go first. I want to go first. How about we both go together? Yeah, yay, we'll do it. And that's, in this case, deeming various items passed in a rule with a single vote was less about people hiding from responsibility for the vote and more about finding a way to have one vote be both sides winning about going first. And what
right,
was so
and also
frustrating was
taking
that
away the ability to hold it hostage because it was deemed to pass already.
Right. And, it was very frustrating to watch the Gottheimer, the people who were casting themselves as moderates, which is supposed to be a synonym for reasonableness in the media, saying, I don't like this idea of us both going at the same time. I want to win and rub it in your face. And that's really your position? And then by the end of
that's
the day,
actually
it wasn't.
my position because that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah. By the end of the day, though, it was, well, look, if you want to vote against the budget, I guess you can tank the budget. But do you dare? No, I don't. All right, well, then I'm right. And we all vote on one vote, and it's a tie. Well, it can't be a tie. We want to be able to say that there's a date certain where we're going to get a vote, and it should be September 27th. All right, well,
okay,
I'll tell you
it's
what.
a tie with a date certain.
We'll do that. Yeah.
That's essentially what the compromise that Pelosi came up with to save face.
And that's another thing.
That's the other thing about Congress. Like, this is like 2% legislating and 98% saving face.
Yeah. Well, that's how you end up with dumb stuff happening, but, okay.
But that's
the way
okay.
to get
You
it done.
need somebody who is in charge who understands that and is willing to play along with saving
Yes.
face. If you do not play the saving face game, you're Jimmy Carter.
Yeah. I guess so.
And that
where
doesn't
you end
work
up
out.
there. Right. Well, not in the short term, that's for sure. Long term, you might be a great guy.
Long term, you're a great guy, but short term, that's just not the way things get done.
Right. And if you're willing to wait for the judgment of the long term, then by all means.
Then
go
you're Joe
for it.
Biden
Yes. Oh.
on
right.
Afghanistan.
That's true, too. Even though that long term was only a couple of days. Jimmy Carter, it took decades.
According to the Lukovich cartoon, it's 40 days and 40 nights. So,
Right.
we still have a ways to go to wait before we have the final judgment there.
Right. Okay. Well, not bad. I think well executed in all of that, and the use of the rule, very clever and helpful, and even the fix of getting them the date of the September 27th thing ended up being a deeming situation. Somebody had introduced a sense of the House resolution, that it was the sense of the House that they should vote on this thing by at least September 27th, and they said, that's a great resolution. We don't have time to pass it. Let's stick it in the rule and deem it passed. So for a lot of time, actually, that was a very clever thing, too. I was worried about any of these 9 saying, well, we're against that whole deeming procedure because Republicans yell at us when we use it. Yeah, that's all well and good, but I'm about to deem you the date certain that you wanted. Are you sure you oppose deeming? No, I love deeming. What are you talking about? Who said they didn't like deeming? I don't know. Look around.
Right, and just so our listeners are aware, you're going to see Peter DeFazio's name come up, and that's because he's chair of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Chair.
Right.
This
and
is an infrastructure bill. So I think the rule actually has him being responsible for making sure that September 27th date is held to.
Yes, it's his prerogative to bring it up, and apparently there was some debate about that. What if he just doesn't because he doesn't like the 9?
Then somebody else can.
Right. Now that's kind of settled. So, okay. That's it. He gets to do it.
Or there's some codicil I was reading that says that, well, he has to bring it up because it's in the rule, but on the date September 27th, once you get there, then anybody can bring it up if he doesn't. But only he can bring it up the day before.
That's true. It's his prerogative as chair of the relevant committee. And I said he was mustachioed, Peter DeFazio, but he may not be currently. I think he might be without it these days. Anybody seen him lately? I don't know.
It's hard to tell in the image that I see here because if he does have a mustache, it's one of those blonde gray ones that's really tough to see.
No, he used to have a fairly dark one, but it did get light, and I think maybe when it went gray,
there's the picture. You could see it for yourself, and it's just really tough to tell.
I think he had it for a long time. I think he went gray. He went with it for a little while, and then said, "It looks like I have no mustache, so maybe I just shouldn't have no mustache." Anyway, not super important, but it made him a very Tom Friedman-like figure. You just had to allow him a certain interval, and he would get the job done.
Right.
All right.
So, that's your hour show right there.
Right. Goodbye, everybody. I mean, I have a few minutes to wrap up here. That's true.
But let's leave you those minutes so you can manage it as you wish, so you can do your exactly 10-minute dash to the orthodontist.
Right. That's all the time I've got.
And today's Wednesday, which means it's Infrastructure Day here.
Right.
So we have to go get the sanitation engineers and Abby on the same page.
Okay.
And so I'll leave, and then we'll be back tomorrow, right?
Okay. Yes, we will.
No?
Yes, absolutely. I mean,
I have to check every day because, everything is all, this is...
Things could change.
This is how you have to manage these things, and David's very good at managing these things, so we'll see what's going on tomorrow.
If we don't get a deal between
it's a dynamic
Abby
situation.
and the sanitation engineers, I don't know. I mean, it's supposed to happen that way. Abby wants you to make your exit before they come. They want to be on the air. We'll see what we can work out between the two parties.
Exactly right. Take care, and
we'll
see what kind of chaos we have tomorrow.
Okay. Probably more, but of a different kind.
Yeah, I'll probably talk a little more about the pandemic and J&J vaccine information and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I need that. Okay, great. Thanks, Greg.
A study of 17 people says a second J&J vaccine is as good as a third, of the others.
Well,
and what do you do with that?
I'll take it.
I don't know. It's just a press release.
Yeah, 17 people. Yeah, all right. Well, I don't think that they're working that way. But
9-fold increase in your antibodies, whatever that's worth. Is it worth anything? I don't know.
Well, somebody tell me something, because
all right, we
got one of these guys in my house, a J&J vaccine.
We got the permanent for Pfizer. Moderna's coming. We'll have kids under 12 EUA by the end of the year.
Excellent.
Maybe in time for Christmas.
How are we doing on sheep
we'll see what happens.
and horses? Are they doing okay?
If you're a horse, please check with your vet and get a prescription before taking any deworming pills. If you're a human, of course, that you don't even have to say, right? Because nobody would do that. They would. So the FDA says, if you're a human, please remember you're not a horse and don't take this stuff.
Yeah, I guess not. Now, you haven't seen any horses with COVID, have you?
Not that they have admitted to.
Right. Okay. So I guess that's what's driving it. I don't know what made them think that. Whatever. Okay. But don't take the stuff. Even if the mayor of Lake Ozark says that he's doing it. I guess he put on his Facebook page that a friend of his is in the hospital, and he's smuggling him ivermectin in the hospital. I don't know how well that's going to go over, but. Not
No.
Hopefully they'll stop him.
So take care, and I'll
Thank
talk to you on Thursday.
Very good. Thanks very much. Good luck with the sanitation engineers. We'll see you then. And we're about to wrap things up. And so the next music you hear will not be our usual break music, but our exit music, which means we just, don't have a lot of time here. I'll note for the record on the pandemic news, I didn't put this aside, but I did retweet it when I saw it yesterday. And the right people have seen it, because I think I was retweeting one of the leading Democratic contenders for the nomination to challenge DeSantis for the governorship of Florida, which I guess happens next year, maybe. And if I had it in front of me, I could credit it properly and give you the name of the cool person who's doing this and everything. I might be able to scroll and find it. But in addition to several school districts defying the purported DeSantis ban on local mask mandates, if I have that right, we reported the other day that the news that we reported. We repeated the reporting of the news reported by a real reporter the other day that the first Trump county, that is the county that went for Trump in the election, had agreed to defy this ban and go forward with the mask mandate. But in addition, we now have the cruise lines, which initially they said they were going to defy the ban on vaccine passports, then said that they wouldn't defy them after all. But now Disney Cruises in particular, has said, well, to hell with it all. We are going to require vaccines and a vaccine passport in order to get on our ships. And when you lose Disney in Florida, well, that's a fairly serious problem, generally speaking. So Nikki Fried, it was, who was tweeting that around, and she is the Florida Agriculture Commissioner, and therefore the only statewide elected Democrat in Florida since 2012, now ready and announced as running for governor in order, she says, to break the rigged system with something new, and I can support that. And she's quite wise to have been campaigning on this issue and pointing this out. It looks like Disney is done with DeSantis too. All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them, as is the Disney quote there. And both Disney and Royal Caribbean were going to add vaccine requirements for their cruises, and they just say, I guess, come at us, bro. Stop us if you can, because not only does all the public, but all the cruise patrons want to have that assurance too, and I guess we're ready to fight you. So that's a good place to draw the line. We'll let them do that, and we'll come back tomorrow with more news. There's a lot of things I could have crammed in all of this time, but I'll tell you what, you're well covered, as always, because Justice Putnam has the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, not coming up next, but coming up in his regular slot at 11. And he'll cover all the things that we may have missed. As, for instance, an incredible full-circle event happened when the co-founder of the Taliban, quietly freed by Trump from a Pakistani prison, met with the CIA, who imprisoned him.
NetworksRadio.com.
What a nice meeting.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
And it's all happening elsewhere, too. ACLU has sued South Carolina over its ban on school mask mandates, and two former top officials at a Massachusetts veterans home where nearly 80 residents died of COVID appeared in court to have their criminal charges dismissed. Oh, man. Well, we'll see what happens in the eventuality. See you tomorrow.